When approaching a limit problem, the first thing you should always do is try to work it out by plugging the limit value into your function. In this case, if I did that, I would have the 1 over 3 minus 1 over 3, just replacing t with 3. And that would be over 3 minus 3. So 1/3 minus a third is 0. 3 minus 3 is also 0. And the problem there is 0 over 0 is our indeterminate form, which tells us that there's probably some sort of way of getting our answer analytically, but direct substitution at this point is not the way to do it. So we will approach the problem differently, try some different algebra to get to where we want to go. Now, one thing I notice in the numerator of this is I have two fractions that are subtracted from one another. Some algebra that I could do is combine those into a single fraction, which would require a common denominator. The common denominator is just going to be 3 times t, so the second fraction I'll multiply by t over t to get that to happen. The first fraction I'll multiply by 3 over 3 to get that to happen. So now I've got the limit as t goes to 3 of 3 divided by 3t minus t divided by 3t all over t minus 3. So I have a common denominator in the numerator between these two 3t's, which means I can combine that into one fraction, and it will look like 3 minus t over 3t, and that's still over t minus 3. Now, this is a compound fraction. Compound fractions can always be reduced. Effectively, you're dividing two fractions. But to divide two fractions, what we do is we invert the denominator and multiply instead. So if I invert the denominator, the limit as t goes to 3, 3 minus t over 3t, that will change into 1 over t minus 3. Now here's a trick that's going to work out for us. 3 minus t and t minus 3 are not the same value. However, they're not that far off from each other. If you think about putting a value in for t, like let's say I put 5 in for t, let t equal 5. Then 3 minus 5 gives me negative 2. 5 minus 3 would give me positive 2. And if you try any other values, you would always get numbers that are opposite in sign here, because it's just the subtraction that's reversed. So subtraction doesn't necessarily give you completely different answers when you reverse it. It just gives you the negative of the answer when you reverse it. So in another way we can think about this is 3 minus t is equal to negative 3 plus t. So I'm just reverse distributing a negative out, which is the same thing as negative t minus 3. So knowing that, what I can do here is I can cancel t minus 3 and 3 minus t, but it just so happens that it cancels to negative 1 rather than positive 1. So now I have the limit t goes to 3, negative 1 over 3t, and at this point, if I plug in my limit value of 3, I get negative 1 over 3 times 3, or negative 1/9.